Well, here it is, the Dark Souls review. I'm so excited about this. I feel about Dark Souls in a similar way to Resident Evil 4, that being it's up there with the greatest. There's so much I want to say about this game that sitting down and writing this script is challenging in the sense that I don't even know where to start. How great the game is, what it did for gaming in the last decade, what it means to me personally, and or how I learned to stop worrying and love that Dark Souls strap-on. So many opportunities. But without this wanting to turn into another 21-minute review of a great game, I'm going to have to cut this down to where I can get a handle on it. It's more of a challenge than it may sound, both because I love this game deeply and because it's more familiar to me than most of my own memories of high school, but I'll do my best. I suppose I'll start with the basics. Dark Souls is a spiritual successor to Demon Souls, which came out 2 years prior. Beyond being just a successor spiritually, it's a successor in every conceivable way. Most importantly, it succeeded Demon Souls by actually being successful. Dark Souls not only sold blockbusters, but it revolutionized third-person fantasy-style gaming in a way that nobody had ever seen before. Whereas Demon Souls was sort of rough and scary to new people with its linear design and being the closest thing a player has ever felt to Ving Rhames in the pawn shop scene from Pulp Fiction, Dark Souls was more like the experience of being Maggie Gyllenhaal's character in Secretary. Softer, and way more consensual. The big reason I'd say is due to its open world design. Dark Souls has a beautiful open world that allows the player to explore and see a good amount of new areas even from an early point. This is where I personally fell in love with Dark Souls. Back when I first played it in 2014, I fell in love with it even though I sucked at it. Within the first hour or so, I had broken a controller out of frustration, but given more time with the game, I found myself awestruck. I spent about the first 30 hours of my first playthrough just running around the areas surrounding Firelink Shrine, finding the elevator to the New Londo Ruins, finding the Valley of Drakes, discovering the back door to Blighttown, accidentally waking up a dragon I thought was dead and proceeding to stand way off at a distance and shoot it with like a million arrows so I could get past it. I knew everywhere I was going led to death, and I just accepted that so I could explore more. What Dark Souls did is it filled a hole in me, no homo, that Zelda left after it stopped being what it used to be. When I first went through Dark Souls, I was going through a divorce, and not only that, but I had finally decided to start my game collection because I had money of my own and I wanted to do something for me for the first time in my life. I started off with old NES and SNES games because I grew up playing them with friends in the low-income rural town I grew up in. One of my first purchases was the original Legend of Zelda for NES, which is still one of my all-time favorite games. At this point, I had sort of given up on Zelda games. Skyward Sword had come out a few years prior, and I still remember standing in the line at the midnight launch at my local GameStop talking to neckbeards about the recent Cataclysm update to World of Warcraft. After spending my time with Skyward Sword, though, I was thoroughly disappointed in a way that just weighed heavy on my heart. I had always tried to make excuses for Twilight Princess when it came out because I knew deep down that it wasn't very good, but playing Skyward Sword for the first time, I knew that there was just no way that I could stand for it. The Scr00bl0rd had let me down, and it was a betrayal I would not soon forget. Feeling alone and lost in the world, I wandered aimlessly through the barren wasteland of early 2010s gaming, playing shit like Remember Me, which ironically no one remembers, and in my darkest moments, Assassin's Creed 3. Oh, I still shudder looking back at that. Then, after starting my game collection, I went out of my way to replay old Zelda games to try and fill that hole. No homo. However, there was only so many times one can die at Death Mountain in Zelda 2 before wanting to set the controller down and do something else. Then, one fateful day, a close friend of mine brought me a copy of Dark Souls to watch me, and I quote, get mad. Get mad I did, but once I had time to sit down, I really did appreciate the game, and I just fell in love with it. Anyone who's ever sat down new to Dark Souls and pushed their way up the actual 90-degree angle of a difficulty curve will tell you that there's a moment while playing the game where everything just kind of clicks. In a single moment of singularity, a light bulb pops on and everything about the game just suddenly makes sense. Once this happens, the game world around you changes in your perspective and you can feel almost lifted. This, incidentally, is exactly how Buddha described enlightenment, which really is what it feels like. It's a genuine euphoria that maybe only one or two other games have given me in my life, and even those didn't come anywhere close to comparing to my Dark Souls epiphany. Part of this, I believe, is due to the fact that I went into Dark Souls blind, and this realization came from the sweat of my brow instead of watching a playthrough or reading something online. It was definitely harder that way, and I'm certainly not saying it's right for everyone. While some of the community is concerned with gatekeeping and their quote, get good, unquote mentality, that's just not me. I hope anyone who enjoys this type of game gives it a try, and whatever it is you need to get a grasp on the mechanics and design, I encourage you to do so that we have something to discuss and fangirl over together. Moving forward from my wank-off session, I figure I'll get into talking about the mechanics. I'm going to be comparing Dark Souls a good amount to Demon Souls since it's both a successor and that this is a marathon. The biggest improvement by far has to be the Estus Flask mechanic. I took a major Eric Cartman double diet do shit all over the healing mechanics of Demon Souls in the last video, and Dark Souls is a lot of the reason why. There are future FromSoft games that go back to doing something similar to what Demon Souls did with healing mechanics, whereas making the items finite, and I don't mind it at all in those games, which I'll eventually get back to, but I digress. The Estus Flask mechanic in Dark Souls is awesome. It helps to create more of a flow to gameplay, whereas the areas between two bonfires are meant to be practiced over and over with a set amount of healing. It's more than possible to get so good that you only ever need the base 5 Estus Flasks that you get from any bonfire without leveling them up. This one major mechanical improvement does so much to elevate Dark Souls above the games that inspired it, and I believe is the other big main reason why Dark Souls found success where Demon's Souls did not. Truth be told, there isn't too much at the core here that's changed from Demon's Souls beyond the open world design and healing mechanics. A lot's been tweaked very slightly for improvements, but not really outright changed. There's basically the same stats, barring a few name changes, and the structure of how one builds a character is very similar. One of the things that I forgot to mention in my Demon's Souls review that's also true about Dark Souls is if you go into this game blind for the first time, you should be prepared to reroll your character at least once. However, it's not necessarily required. The first time I played this game, I chose the Wanderer class because I was still in my dirty hippie phase and I felt like it suited me. I struggled my way through the early part of the game until I came to a tower outside of the Sunlight Altar, and after a couple hours I managed to actually take down my first Black Knight. He then dropped the Black Knight Greatsword, which I was way under leveled to use. It was then explained to me by a friend that I chose a dexterity class which was designed more for dodging and parrying rather than heavy armor and strength. Instead of re-rolling, however, I just spent way too many hours grinding and running around attempting to stack my strength up to where I could use that weapon. Looking back, knowing the game as well as I do now, I probably just would have re-rolled, but I appreciate that the game allowed me the opportunity to turn a base dex build into a strength build just through my own time and effort. My first time beating Dark Souls, I'd say I dropped about 175 hours into it. One of the best additions to Dark Souls and one of my favorite mechanics in basically any game ever is the Blue Eye Orb and the Blade of the Dark Moon Covenant. To break this down for people who actually have a life, it works like this. In Dark Souls, playing online in a human state allows you to either invade another player's world as a red spirit or risk having one of them invade yours as such. However, there are people out there like me who always felt bad about invading other people online and killing them to take their shit. So keeping this in mind, the designers of the game left a ring that one can pick up and take to a specific NPC to join their covenant. Once you do that, you've granted the ability to invade specific players who have acquired sin points by killing certain NPCs and generally just being dicks. This allows wee-wees like me to participate in the PvP aspect of the game without feeling the need to flatulate myself and ask Lord Cthulhu's forgiveness for my trespasses. I love this so much, and it's one of the many ways Dark Souls just has layers upon layers of mechanics that flow perfectly into the world and lore design. On that note, I would say that's Dark Souls' strength when it comes to revolutionizing story design in games. Every single aspect of Dark Souls is meticulously crafted so that all the items, monsters, NPCs, weapons, etc. are all part of the overarching world. I can't remember a time where I was blown away so much by a game taking its mechanics, world lore, and level design and molding them into one solid piece that goes deeper than I thought a game ever really could. It is a somewhat common complaint that Dark Souls, and most Souls games in general, require you to read all the item descriptions and talk to all the NPCs and really work to piece together exactly what's going on here. For instance, the revelation that humanity is the Dark Soul is something that comes to one who pays attention, and it feels so good to put that together while working your way through the game just based entirely on your own work ethic. There really is something to be said about a game in this day and age that allows the player to engage with it only as much as they're willing to, rather than just attempting to shove a bunch of shit in their face. Beyond just that, Dark Souls was designed in a way where working your way through it on your own without any engagement with the community is almost impossible. It's possible, obviously, but can feel insurmountable without it. This quality of Dark Souls is what takes me back to what used to make those old NES and PC games great. It's hard to argue that a game usually can't be improved by working through it with others. That's what made games like the original Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, Baldur's Gate, Resident Evil, The Last Vikings, yada yada, so much more fun to engage with. There are few things in the gaming community that can help solidify friendships more than working together to pass something that's giving both of you a run for your money. You know what I mean, right? Those wonderful little moments when you're sitting on a couch playing a game with a buddy who's also really into it, and the two of you trade things off that you've learned about the game that the other one hasn't discovered yet. It feels so good, and for me tends to be where most of the best video game memories are made. On the other side of this coin, however, there are some areas and important items that the developers really went out of their way to hide behind extreme obtuseness, probably for that community reason, and it just isn't great. For instance, there's an item you need to get the final level up on your weapon that you can only get by returning to the starting area. The way back to the starting area requires a long process of going out of your way to get to a particular part of the main hub that most people would probably just assume is set dressing. Beyond that, you have to perform a specific action for way longer than one would probably attempt unknowingly, and I'm having a hard time believing you could ever figure this out unless someone either told you or it was by complete accident. There's also one of the best areas in the whole game that's buried in the back of the poison swamp, and you have to somehow not only know it's there, but that it exists behind an invisible wall, and then a chest, and then another invisible wall that's placed in a way you wouldn't assume it is one. Even more so, beyond that area, there's a whole nother area with a mini-boss and an NPC that provides you with another covenant to join. The main item you need to level up your weapon past +10 is extremely scarce beyond the last area, and one of the very few you can get in the main main world before that is behind the only invisible wall in the game that has to be attacked instead of being rolled through. So if you've discovered invisible walls in other areas while rolling and then rolled into this specific invisible wall, you would assume it's just a regular wall. As much as I love a game designed to bring the community together through its challenge and hidden goodies, these aspects are just ludicrous. Getting towards the end of the review here, I wanted to take a moment and go back to earlier when I mentioned the Dark Souls community. There's a lot of rightfully earned dislike towards certain members of it, more specifically the ones I mentioned earlier with the gatekeeping and the get good mentality. I'd be lying if I said these people didn't exist or were even just a super small minority. However, myself as well as most of the members of the community dislike these people a lot. If they were being honest with themselves, or with others for that matter, they would admit that they also had to get online and look at a walkthrough or watch a video or talk to a friend to get through this thing. It is true that even with all that, one does still have to sit down and play the game until they get a grasp on it if they ever intend to beat it, hence get good. But still, you should never let anyone make you feel bad for learning and working your way through the game at your own pace. I bring this up because a lot of people I've talked to who haven't played Dark Souls and are hesitant to start even though they feel like they'd like it typically tell me it's because starting the game feels like such a huge task that they won't be able to get any help making headway on without some cuck getting in their face and making them feel bad for not dumping the neckbeard amount of hours into it that they have. If you haven't played Dark Souls and decide to try it, please keep in mind that the rest of us really don't like these people either, and you shouldn't allow them to keep you out of what could be the best gaming experience you've had in years. And hey, if you sit down and give it the old college try and still don't dig it, no problem. Nothing is for everyone. So in a nutshell, that's it. I love Dark Souls. It changed my life, brought me out of a gaming funk, and gave myself and my friends, both current and new, something to engage with each other over for many years to come. I would really recommend giving this game a go. And if Elden Ring has helped you enjoy this formula in a way you haven't before, I'd say go and head on over to Lordran for a fantastically engaging experience.
Later,